So, hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across our industry, covering a wide variety of topic areas, from skills and careers through to technical overviews, and we talk a little bit around those soft skills as well. So, look, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. It really is appreciated. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, a like, and a subscribe. That would all be awesome. Okay, so my next guest this week, he is a cloud advocate and he's a public speaker. He's an MCT and he's doing everything all around cloud and security. Based out of the Netherlands, I'm super happy to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With as Mr. Rolf Schutten. Hey Rolf, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Hi John, thank you for having me. Well, it's a bit warmer here in the Netherlands, 30 degrees outside, but I'm doing, besides that, very well.
Yes, I hear you. We got the same problem in the UK as well, Rolf. So I think we'll sit here and perspire slightly as we talk.
Yeah.
At least we've got a bit of shade indoors, eh? But look, Rolf, it's I'm super chuffed that you come on to say hello. I know we're having another catch up with the Welsh Shore user group soon as well to talk about some of the topic areas I think we've got planned to talk about tonight now. So I'm really excited to get going. Look, but before we delve into the goodness, do you want to just give yourself a little bit of an introduction and let people know, who you are, what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rolf Schutten. I work at Sigeka in the Netherlands, which is a big IT solutions and services company. I'm a cloud advocate, primarily focused on Azure, but we also do AWS. And my job is to help our customers within the cloud adoption journey and help them with innovation and really bringing the digital transformation, leveraging their cloud technology. And I am a part of the engineering team where I bring every requirements and new needs of customers, new demands to the engineering team so they know how they move forward with developing and researching new possibilities for products and services.
No, that's awesome. I suppose it's one of those spaces at the moment that there's so much opportunity out there with cloud. And, maybe, look, let's talk a little bit about your career. How did you get into cloud first and foremost, Rolf? So, like I say, that role that you're doing at the moment sounds really interesting in the sense that you're taking customer requests and requirements and, helping your company and your engineering team to build those solutions. I mean, what's your journey like to get to that kind of point in your career at the moment?
Well, actually, I'm not... you see a lot of people within this industry that grew up from a technical career like a system engineer towards architecture, advocacy, etc. My background is more in the project and service delivery management. So I've been, before I was an architect or a cloud advocate, I've been a service management for many years. And when you are responsible for those contracts and service level agreements and you talk on C-level with IT directors, you learn that there are a lot of technical solutions out there which do not really fit the business needs, and those IT directors struggle with the conversation with their business partners. I learned the hard way, working at a company before I went to cloud technology, that, I was at that moment, I was responsible for all the service managers for that particular IT service provider within the Netherlands. And my day-to-day job in the end was negotiating with customers about the lump sum of contracts. So those customers wanted to leave.
Okay.
And something happened within my mind. I thought, if they are not going to help me with finding the optimal solution for the customers, why not do it myself? So that was really the starting point for me to deep dive into technology. I had a lot of people around me who were actually doing this work. We have some highly skilled people in Azure MVPs within particular companies within the Netherlands. They are close to me. They are within my inner circle. So they really helped me becoming senior in the Azure cloud technology. And that is where my career started, as something about translating customer requirements to a fit for purpose solution. And I just built on that with using information from my inner circle and from the Microsoft community. And well, now is the point about giving back to the community what they gave to me. So that's actually where I am in my career right now.
No, and it's cool to hear that you're kind of giving back. Like I just mentioned, you are coming on, you're doing a bit of public speaking at the moment in these areas. And it's really interesting to hear that you kind of, started your career in that kind of service management kind of role, not necessarily the deep dive techie, but I guess that's what you've become now over the last few years, Rolf. It's that, like you say, there are so many opportunities out there, right, in terms of what we can do with cloud and how we can deploy and manage and things that we can do and solutions that we can build. What does that look like from a perspective of when you're speaking to customers? Like we said, that strategic view of how do they deploy cloud, and do you have those conversations with customers? And have you got any good hints or tips that you want to kind of impart?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because when I talk to customers, they obviously are a one-time or two-time outsourced already to within whatever MSP they are taking their services from. And when you start talking about Azure or cloud, the first thing that comes to mind is we need to build an Azure landing zone. But that's like fast forward, you're missing 3 or 4 steps if you want to leverage that real power within Azure. So, well, coming back on strategy, when looking from a business perspective, there is no CEO of a company that says, I want an Azure landing zone. Mm-hmm. Looking at the strategy of a company, they want shorter time to market, they want less carbon footprint, they want to make it more customer centric. And in that strategy phase, and Microsoft did actually a very good job describing it in the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, which is actually the approach that I try to follow as much as literally as they describe it as possible. Is you really need to build on your motivations, your motives, and your business justification and your business case throughout your whole cloud adoption journey. And that is actually where a lot of projects, cloud adoption journeys go wrong when they start within the technology. Mm-hmm. So my first tip would be make absolutely clear why you are going to the cloud.
I guess it's those, like you say, picking you up on those motivations. I resonate so much with you, Rolf, when people want to jump straight in. And look, let's face it, that probably did happen. Certainly over the last few years, businesses kind of jumped in feet first, maybe now kind of recoiling a little bit from that kind of sprawl, I guess, that we're kind of all used to. Something gets out of hand, it's not got proper controls and governance. Yeah. But more to pick you up on that point of motivation, understanding the why, I guess, is what you're saying, isn't it? Why are we doing this? Why are we learning new things? Why are we moving things to the cloud? I mean, what kind of reasons are there behind why businesses typically want to use cloud platforms? What's your experience like there, Rolf?
Well, there are numbers of reasons, and there are examples given within the documentation of Microsoft, but yesterday I had a conversation with a bank within the Netherlands, and we have a governing company or entity within the Netherlands, the Nederlandse Bank, the Dutch bank, and it actually enforces Dutch banks to be compliant towards their good practice. And if they're not going to be compliant towards those good practice guidelines, they are not allowed within the Netherlands to, actually do anything with money. So it also applies to insurance companies, etc. You could strategize further on, I have an on-premise situation and it's not compliant to those good practices right now, but I could also try new in a greenfield environment, knowing I'm already busy with my application landscape to rationalize those and monolithic applications. I do want to make it more modular. I do want to work with API-driven applications. So those two motivations lead to adopting the cloud, because you can better build and, there it is again, following the Azure landing zone. The landing zone needs to be compliant to those good practices. So that are actually very good reasons to go to the cloud. Earlier, a few years back, the number one reason was the capital investment versus the operational expenses.
Sure. Yeah.
That still applies to a lot of companies these days, actually. But it is very important to have your conversation with your customer about when you're migrating your virtual machine from your VMware solution on-premise to something within Azure. You're just moving the same workload and taking Azure as a data center, as just another data center. If you want to do something with compliancy or with time to market or agility, you need to think about, is infrastructure the best model for me? And if so, do I need to add something to it like infrastructure as code to meet that motivation for agility or a shorter time to market? Sure. Because with playing with AWS and Azure, the quality of your service is no longer something you can distinguish yourself from from other parties, because Azure does deliver within certain quality levels. So we're really now in a time-based market where it all goes. It all falls apart on how fast you can deliver your solutions.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like you say, with that agility, speed to market, of deploying applications, I guess it depends on the kind of vertical that the company sits in. Like you say, you mentioned the financial services infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Why, are you going to get the most out of the cloud if you just take in a like for like, scenario? What else could you use in cloud terms to meet some of those objectives or those goals that you might have set yourself? But I guess that's the overriding factor, isn't it? Is like you say, roll a few steps back, understand why you're doing this in the first place, what you're looking to get out of it, and then build it going forward. Now, I guess a lot of the time, back to that point around, I guess over the last 2 years, lots of companies just kind of jumped in feet first and started to deploy all sorts of infrastructure and services, and maybe are now looking at their bills at the a few months or a few years later down the road and thinking, right, how can I kind of cost optimization and cost management always comes up in conversations. I mean, what's your take on that, Rolf? Do you see a lot of that with customers at the moment, and have you got any good key takeaways there?
Well, there are a lot of key takeaways there, but it all starts with, do you have the insight on what you're using right now and what is living within your landscape? Just something very practical. We see a lot of customers who have adopted Azure for a couple of years, and there are just hidden snapshots from backups living within that landscape. And the customer is paying for it, but it's never going to use those snapshots ever again. So it's really about cleaning up the mess from historical data, etc. Further on, you also have leveraging everything that Microsoft offers you about using your license programs, Azure Hybrid Benefit, right-sizing your virtual machines. It's actually very interesting when you talk about customers about migrating your machines to Azure. For them, it's very logical that when a VM now has 4 CPUs and 16 gigabyte of RAM, it should have the same size within Azure. Mm-hmm. But the customer doesn't know it has new chipset and processor families, and it might even go with 2 processors and 8 gigabytes of RAM. So the right sizing is very crucial when it comes to cost optimization.
How can we right size, Rolf? Is there anything that we can use to kind of right size VMs and things like that when we're looking to shift?
Well, actually, Microsoft has obviously the Azure Migrate agents, the Azure Migrate solution, and it's capable of doing your pre-assessed performance-based evaluation before migrating. So what it does is you install those agents, or you do it agentless, and it is going to collect the metric data of your current workloads on your on-premise environment. And it will actually advise you on what the SKU or the VM size will need to be within Azure. So Azure and Microsoft will do that for you if you do it in the proper way. Just follow the process on how Microsoft actually developed the approach for a DC migration program, and you're golden.
So that's basically the Migrate appliance is looking at your infrastructure over a period of time and going, well, you've got a 4 vCPU, 16 gig of RAM server, but actually you're only really using 8 gig of RAM.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, no, that makes a lot of sense, and yeah, there's a lot of money to be saved there. I mean, what other kind of little nuggets? You mentioned hybrid use benefits, and I've seen that. That's about if you've got like an enterprise agreement for your server OSs, you can kind of tick a checkbox, yeah, in Azure. I think that's the hybrid use benefit. Are there any other measures we can think about, Rolf?
Well, you actually, Microsoft does want to give you the insight on your costs and on how you can allocate them to different departments within your organization. They have cost management and billing, which is a very powerful insights tool to actually reach the goals from, let's play with doing more with less.
So
And
just
less
being able
out
to
of more.
visualize just how much is this stuff costing me, and like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, that'd be, yeah,
yeah,
explain that to me, Rolf. Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool.
But moving back a few steps on strategize, customers need to understand that there are different account models within cloud. So we have these general, what we call the cost allocation model. So IT is like something that only costs money and doesn't leverage everything. Well, we're moving away from that. In many organizations, IT is now a department within the company that has its own profit and loss goals and objectives. So you actually can, you're delivering your services to the, let's say, the HR department or the marketing department. Within your infrastructure and within your management hierarchy within Azure, you have to do something with, resource tagging, obviously, because we need to label something to get that information from. If you do that correct within your design in Azure, cost management within Azure can give you the full insight on what resource is allocated to what department, how much money did he make, how much consumption did he in the last month, how much will he do he can even forecast for the months to come. So it's a very powerful tool to give you that insights.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. So you were talking about the tagging there of resources. So it's just that ability to, I guess, put a cost center tag on various resources and then you can use the cost management piece that's built into the Azure platform to surface some of those things and categorize them up. It's not just the whole subscription. I'm being billed X amount every month for this subscription. You can break it down to that level, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
No, I mean, it's cool stuff. And this is the thing about the cloud that I love so much is that it keeps you on your toes. I know cost management's been around certainly for a fair while now with that ability to tag resources. But, equally, because there's so much we can do, you ever find that it's like you're having to explain some of these terms that may have been around for quite a while because things are so fast-paced and people are coming on board with cloud at such a rapid pace, sometimes the obvious is overlooked. Do you find that, Rolf?
Well, it's just like the traditional models are about, I have some demand within in the traditional data centers, we sized on the top demand. So sure. we didn't have to be aware of seasonality. And let's say for an organization that needs to close their books within in the end of the year, let's say 31 of December, that's the highest traffic, the highest load, the highest usage of the machines. So that is going to be the only view we're going to look at when buying hardware and buying software for our workloads. Because we need to be able to deliver the compute power on that moment. That's the most crucial moment within the year. We need to deliver that. Within Azure, you have dynamic scaling. So the play rules are actually changing, but we're still trying to plot that traditional model within Azure, just another data center. That's why we're going to migrate that machine with 4 CPU and 16 gigabytes of RAM to Azure as is. But as is scenarios will always lead to higher costs than you're actually demanding within your resources. Sure. And because we are approaching it as a traditional model, you see that we're losing a lot of money on the right. So I actually, one of my public speaking demos is about stop robbing yourself. And it actually goes about right sizing, using Azure cost management and billing for your insights. And you see a lot of people coming afterwards, after the presentation towards me and say, I didn't know. I really didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the thing. I think it's those baseline principles that are great to get out there. Certainly having conversations like this about it, hopefully, it raises those questions into there's so much going on. I guess it's unfair to expect one person to know everything that's going on, and there's no criticism of anything here. But just being aware of these things can save your business a lot of money. We're not talking potentially pocket change here. This could be a significant saving, over a period of time. So, look, I mean, Rolf, in terms of one of the other areas we want to talk about in terms of not just cost management now, but when we move into using cloud for business continuity and disaster recovery circumstances, obviously where we're given SLAs by Microsoft for running resources within the Azure platform dependent, and we're given other SLAs for if we use availability zones or other things like that we can kind of use to build these solutions. Chaos engineering is something that I've recently seen has come into play. Do you want to describe that? I suppose, how do we know that our application or our services are going to respond well in terms of uptime when we need them the most?
Yeah,
it's a really interesting area.
Chaos engineering is a very interesting area where a lot of open source software was already available to, being able to leverage the chaos engineering principles. Microsoft actually now has Azure Chaos Studio in preview. And chaos engineering is actually the process of breaking things on purpose so you can learn from it and you can improve your solutions so it won't happen when the least expected moment. But the funny thing is, when we're talking about SLAs in Azure, we have a virtual machine with a premium SSD, and it has an uptime of 99.99%. Mm-hmm. When I'm putting a load balancer above it, and it has the same uptime, it doesn't mean that the total solution will be 99.99% up. It's actually additive. So your solution is going from a downtime, guaranteed downtime of 8 minutes, immediately towards days. So that's why chaos engineering is coming, because it wants to find that single point of failure within your solution so you can build a more robust and resilient solution. Some things we can do is region attacks. We can do DNS chaos attacks. You can think of every scenario that might break it, and you can just simulate it on your solution so you can improve your solution at that moment.
So I'm guessing a lot of people watching this now are probably wincing at the thought of deliberately putting problems into their environments just to see. I mean, how would businesses go about doing this against production systems? What's the general, mechanism and methodology there, Rolf?
Well, you see that we already did test plans within the traditional processes. So you have your development environment, testing, acceptance, and production. But you see that nowadays, when coming with blue-green deployments and canary deployments, we're actually going to do chaos engineering on a subset of users that are using a new version of your solution or your software. And there we will enforce the deliberate attacks of chaos engineering and learn from that subset of users without impacting the 59 or 99% of the other users before we introduce the new version towards that users.
Okay, so you can build that in, like you say, you can pick a subset of your test or dev users, whatever it might be, and you can leave the remaining user base unaffected effectively by these. I mean, it's cool. I mean, where is that plan to go in terms of what that Chaos Studio is all about? What kind of things can you do with it, Rolf?
Well, Chaos Studio has a lot of they work with the agent for the virtual machines, but they also leverage some things for the services-based services they do. So a practical example, a region attack. So you can simulate that. I live in the Netherlands, so we do a lot within the West Europe data center. You can actually simulate that the West Europe data center will go down.
Right. Okay. At that level, right? Yeah.
Yeah, at that level. But another example, we can do we can enforce latency, so we can do a lot of traffic pushing towards our workloads, and it doesn't mind for if that is a virtual machine where we have to work with the Azure Chaos Studio agent, or that we're doing it towards a Kubernetes cluster or within a Cosmos database. We can do all those scenarios on several resources. And I think Microsoft will expand the target resources in the upcoming months, because it is a preview obviously. But they actually already have a very big fault library, which is based on the Chaos Mesh for Kubernetes, where you can find all different faults that you can, launch and target on your resources.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So what you're saying is there's a whole list of faults against a particular service or type of service that you can say, okay, I want to inject a bit of latency against it, or I want to do. Right. That's pretty cool. And yeah, it's that Chaos Monkey kind of affair, isn't it? Where,
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. That. And you look, in terms of, it's in a preview feature. I've not had a chance to dig into this in any great detail at the moment. What kind of information does it give you back? Does it give you back actionable reports or advice? How does that work in terms of once you've done a particular simulation of a fault? What kind of feedback do you get on that?
Well, Azure Chaos Studio itself does not give you very much information back, but obviously you already have, whether it's your own monitoring solution or it's Azure Insights, you can get that information from within your Azure Insights or Azure Monitor solutions. So it's really about, when I'm now going to launch some traffic injection, or I'm going to do a DNS injection, you know where to look. So that's the strongest part about chaos engineering is you can introduce those faults within a controlled environment, and you can look at a smaller scope of where you need to look to find what happened within that fault during that time.
And see how it affects your application or your service at the time. Right, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I got it. So, I mean, and I'm looking forward to, when this video goes out, you probably would have done the talk at the Welsh Azure group, Rolf. So that'll be in the playlist below as well. So, in fact, it gives me an opportunity to tag it in the video, doesn't it? Looking forward. So go and check out that video wherever the link is. I'll put that in eventually. Rolf, look, it's been super great, having you on and talking through a few of these areas. I know there's lots of nuggets of information, and I know there's lots of areas we haven't touched upon in cost management and chaos engineering and things of that nature. But look, there is always one question that I like to spring on my guests as they come on the show. But look, we've talked about careers and getting into cloud and the amount of learning and activity that we need to do as individuals that we try and need to stay on top of as best that we can. Where do you think we're headed as an industry, Rolf? What's the next big bet in technology from your perspective over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I actually believe in the forever pendulum swing. So you see that in the total market that we're moving from on-premise to cloud to on-premise to cloud. So that will happen forever. The pendulum swing is going to swing forever. Looking more towards our customers. I'm a customer guy. I'm a customer-centric guy. I think we will, more than we're doing now, we will more let our customers and development teams do things for themselves. You see it in DevOps approaches, you see it in self-service solutions, and I think it will go even further, even beyond that. So you have in the Power Platform low-code, that's just because we don't want to code at the programming department. No, we want to have the business users make solutions for themselves. Sure. And I think we will build further on that, on AI, on machine learning.
I mean, it's a great area, isn't it? That low code, no code. It kind of empowers a lot of people to be able to go and build some really cool. The Power Suite, for example, has got some really great features and ways that we can work as those. I guess it's those power users. It's not necessarily those technical staff. It's people that are out in the business in various departments that have got access to these features and functionality. Yeah, I mean, it's a great shout. I think there's going to be a lot more of that going on. But yeah, look, there's so much that we could talk about, Rolf. This has been such a fantastic chat. Are there any last parting words of wisdom you'd like to impart on us before we bring an end to this session?
Well, following that customer-centric approach, I think it's good to remind yourself sometimes that the time that IT and technology staff was in the driver's seat, that time is far gone. So business is in the driver's seat, and we need to help them to leverage their business aspirations.
No, that's an absolutely great end to a great video and great session. Rolf, really looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for being an awesome guest and coming on and saying hello. And it's a pleasure to meet you finally and say hello.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Anytime. See you very soon, Rolf. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.